Hey guys, welcome to my channel. So today I'm doing something a little bit different. I decided that I wanted to share my top 5 favourite tarot decks of all time. Or maybe I should say for now, because I do tend to change my mind. But with saying that, I've been reading tarot for years and I find myself being drawn to pretty much the same decks over and over again. Two of these decks are kind of more recent purchases, as in the past year for me, so they've made it into my top 5. So I'm going to leave a link in the description bar below to every single deck. Some of them I have bought in my own local spiritual shop, and then others from Amazon online. So I'll make sure to include everything in the description below. Anyway, let's get started. So I'm doing top 5. So my number 5 deck that I use is the Dark Wood Tarot by Sasha Graham and art by Abigail Larson. Now, unfortunately, I cannot find the actual box that this came in, but the box is beautiful. It's huge, it's magnetic, opens up, beautiful illustration on the inside, I think from the card, the Ace of Pentacles. But I do have the deck here. But anyway, what I want to do first is I actually want to show you a quick flip through of the guidebook, because I have to say this actual deck in particular, the guidebook that came with this is just absolutely incredible. You can just see the sheer volume of it. It is literally like a car manual. So yeah, and it's just beautifully illustrated in full colour, quotes. So you have your contents, introduction, reading the wood. So you get a really good insight here into how to work with this deck. As you can see here, there's a lot of work here on, you know, the shadow side, if that's what you feel called to do in terms of working with this deck. So as you can see, we haven't even hit the description of the cards yet, so it really is quite beautiful. I'm not going to go through the entire book, but I just want to show you that there are some card spreads. Prologue, Major Arcana. Okay, so just to give an example here. So you have roughly about 2 to 3 pages of each card meaning, which is just absolutely incredible. And especially, you know, if you're a beginner and you want to kind of explore another alternative kind of deck, if you want to shy away from the traditional Rider-Waite Smith tarot deck, then I'd totally recommend this. But what I love about this deck in particular, it's like for me, it was like reliving my inner child and exploring that kind of haunted, enchanted forest. So, you know, the deck itself is absolutely beautiful, but the major selling point in particular is this beautiful compact guidebook that comes with it. So let's have a look through the actual cards, and you'll see here with the backing, kind of like the colour scheme is keeping in theme with the actual forest. It's like a beautiful mossy green, and I don't know if you can see there, but it's just 2 little spiders, and of course the D&W font here, which is lovely, so it's reversible as well. So I will show you through some of these beautiful images. So the artist Abigail, it's kind of more on the animation side, but it gives a very kind of like, I don't know, a Disney kind of villain feel. That's the only way I can describe it. But yeah, just the imagery is just absolutely stunning. It's so beautifully illustrated. Now, as you can see, the cards are quite on the shiny side, but that doesn't take away from the quality of this deck, in my opinion anyway. So what I've noticed from working with this deck is that it is quite delicate, you know, in nature, but it also delivers the truth in quite a very matter-of-fact way, which is something that I need. So, and what I love about it as well is that it really does complement the practice of my own personal witchcraft. So I tend to implement this deck into a lot of my rituals. And especially coming up to Samhain and Halloween, I can tell you that this makes a regular appearance. So yeah, I'm just absolutely adored. So you'll notice with some of the imagery, you know, in particular here, like with this moon card, you know, it is quite provocative and sensual and mysterious and sultry at times. But what I love is that it helps you to reconnect with both the dark and light side of the sacred feminine within you. And I really love this Emperor card because the Emperor is so utterly powerful. And of course, this is the front image of the guidebook. It's just beautiful. And I'll leave it here at the High Priestess because if I'm to go through every single entire deck here, we'll be here until Christmas, let's be honest. So, and of course, if you do choose to buy this deck, I don't want to ruin it for you. I want to keep the majority of these images as a surprise for you. So that is the Darkwood Tarot. And as I said, it is quite slippery. Cardstock is a bit more on the thinner side, but it is holding up quite well, considering that I don't actually store this in the box that it came with. I just store it in a little cloth bag. So anyway, let's move on to my fourth deck, which I'm sure a lot of people are very familiar with. And again, I do not have the box for this. I have no idea where it is, completely misplaced it. But number 4 is the Lightseers Tarot. Now, I just need to say that I own 3 of Chris Ann's decks. Oh God, I forget the name of one of them. The Muses, I don't know if it's the Muse. I have that one, but I don't tend to really find myself drawn to it. And then the other one is, I forget the name, guys. I'll leave the link anyway down below, the other animal themed one. But the Lightseers one is one that I find myself constantly using, and in particular with clients as well, because this deck is just, it is just so delightful to work with. It's incredibly uplifting and illuminating. So the guidebook isn't exactly oversaturated with information, but it does provide a decent amount of meanings to the cards. So we'll have a quick flip through. Okay, so we just have a brief explanation of the major arcana and minor, a note on the reversals. And you know, I kind of find with this deck, you know, even though if you have trained, you know, specifically with the Rider-Waite and you're familiar with the symbology of that card, of those cards, I should say, I think with the Lightseers Tarot, especially if you're a beginner, it really does invite you to use your intuition. I found it really comfortable and easy to work with when I first got this deck. So just bear that in mind, that even though this guidebook, it doesn't necessarily have a lot of information, as I said, but I really don't think it's actually quite needed with this deck. So we have a few card spreads, and then here we are. So as you can see, quite small, only about roughly 2 pages per card, if even. So you have the light and the shadow, which is good, and then a nice description, and then an affirmation. So as you can see, that pretty much is a book. Okay, so let's get into the actual flip through. And I love the backings, they just give me life. No, they really do. I don't know what it is, just the simplicity of this design. Like, you know, in a lot of ways it kind of reminds me a little bit of sacred geometry just right here in the center. So I love it. And there's kind of like this kind of hippie-ish vibe to the entire deck. So what's really great about this deck is that it's excellent for many topics, you know, from career, self-healing, relationships. It really is adaptable, and this would be quite a popular choice with my clients. So let's have a nice flip through. So it's a very kind of modernized, contemporary feel as well. And what I love about it is that there's a lot of diversity throughout this deck, as you'll see when we go through the flip through. I think that Two of Swords is just really powerful. And you know when you buy a tarot deck and you're trying out for the first time, for me there was just an immediate connection with this deck. So that's when I knew, okay, I've made a valid purchase here. So this Empress card in particular is just absolutely stunning. You know, it's incredibly vibrant and really dreamy and just very comforting to the eye. And you know, for me personally, when I work with this deck, in particular, if I'm in a very vulnerable chapter in my life, I tend to lead towards this deck because it's it's quite safe, it's familiar, it's inviting, and it's uplifting. And also it is very encouraging. It's a beautiful depiction of the lovers. Another thing to note as well with this deck, I've used this deck to work with a lot of kind of blocked chakra energy. So in terms of if you're looking to improve on your self-healing journey, again, this is a deck that I would totally recommend. It is very gentle, serene, and really quite tranquil in a lot of ways. Like even this tarot card, as you can see, it's just absolutely beautiful. So yeah, for me it's it's incredibly soothing, and this deck is like food for the soul. So I will leave it at that. Again, I don't want to go through every single image, but hopefully you get the gist of why this deck is in my top favorites. So moving on to number 3. And you know, with this deck actually, I find that when I'm looking at it, YouTube or reading blogs, and speaking to friends in my circle, in my tarot circle, for some reason this deck doesn't seem to be, I don't want to say not popular, just I don't think it's been discovered as much. And I actually bought this deck on a complete whim one day in my spiritual shop. And I had heard nothing about it, seen nothing about it. And I just thought, oh, sure, what the hell? I'll just give it a go. And I'm so glad I did, because this deck, again, is one of those decks where it is very familiar. It's very comfortable for me. And in particular, I think as well, this would be another great alternative to people that are beginning to study tarot. I think this, I would recommend having this in the collection. So anyway, so it's the Field Tarot by Hannah Elizabeth Fofana. Okay, and it's just plain on the inside. And now, in terms of the guidebook, it is kind of quite similar to Chris-Anne's, except with even less information. But it's not really a big deal, but we'll have a quick flip through anyway. So we have an introduction, reading tarot, Celtic cross spreads. We have some standard tarot spreads here, which is good. And then we're straight into the meanings. So as you can see, it's not packed full of information, but the key words are pretty much in sync with what you would describe, the general Rider-Waite tarot cards. So there's no actual like reproduction here of the images or anything like that, but I don't think it's a big deal because the deck itself is enough as it is. So how would I describe this? It's kind of like there's a lot of beautiful pastel colours, and there's kind of quite a cosmic feel as well to some of the imagery. And I believe that a lot of this is kind of digital collage artwork. So it kind of gives you that kind of more of a kind of modern feel to the deck overall. It's quite contemporary and indie in a lot of ways. So there's some beautiful dreamy kind of watercolors going throughout it, and the artist tends to use actually quite a lot of kind of botanical patterns. You'll see as we go through the flip through. So here we have the Empress. So the minor arcanas in this deck have keywords. Okay, so we can see that here with instigation. However, the majors don't. But I think in particular, if you are a beginner and trying to familiarize yourself with tarot, I think this is a really, really good tool to have this deck in your collection. And this is such a beautiful Ten of Swords. Now, there's a few things to note. Some of the major arcana cards are actually renamed. And from what I remember, I believe the World card is called the Universe, the Hanged Man is Perspective, and the Fool is Beginnings. And then another thing to note as well with the major arcana is that both the Strength and the Justice card have been swapped numerically. So that's just something to bear in mind in case you decide to get this deck. This King of Wands really reminds me of Damon from House of the Dragon. It really does. A more gentle kind of portrayal of him, I'd say, but definitely getting House Targaryen vibes from this. And you know, again, this deck is one of those decks that would appeal to a lot of my clients. It just really delivers quite positive and uplifting messages, and considering the imagery is just so gently done. There's a lot of beautiful kind of ethereal vibes, and I just absolutely adore the use of the soft kind of pastel watercolors. So yeah, the deck is quite minimalist at times and has quite a contemporary feel. I won't go through any more images, but I will say in particular the major arcana cards are really quite beautiful and powerful. And it was actually the major arcana cards at first is what really, you know, caused me to have this immediate connection with this deck. So that is the Field Tarot by Hannah Elizabeth Fofana. And yes, so number 2 is of course The Murder of Crows. Now, I did an unboxing on this deck a few months ago, and you know, when I first opened it, I was totally, you know, captivated by it, but completely creeped out at the same time. And I knew okay, this is definitely going to be something that I am going to implement into my shadow work journey, and that's exactly the main primary reason that I've been using this deck. So it's Murder of Crows Tarot by Corrado Roy. Packaging is absolutely divine. You know, the negative photo effect here, it is very dramatic. It's a purely black and white deck, and which I really quite like. I didn't think I was going to be such a fan of the kind of black and white imagery to begin with, but with this deck I'm just so over the moon with this, guys. You've no idea. So in terms of the guidebook, it's pretty shit, I'm not gonna lie. It's in 6 languages, and because it's low Scarabeo, you kind of get the bare minimum. However, it doesn't take away from the actual deck. So just so you can see here, listening to the wisdom of the crows, structure of the tarot, the major, the suits, the courts. And then we just have a few, two spreads. Tarot is a tool, meanings and keywords, reversals. Okay, so it's not too bad in terms of your kind of standard little white book that you'd get that you just throw away in the bin. But I have obviously held on to this because there is quite a, how would I describe it, kind of a powerful depiction of each of these cards, in particular if you're doing shadow work. So as you can see there, for the major arcana, we just have a paragraph on each one, and then we're into the minors. So yeah, there's, you know, I think this, yeah, it pretty much stops here. So yeah, the guidebook isn't the best, but there's enough information there to work with. And just look at the backing of these cards. Oh, I just, like, I mean, one word, obsessed. Absolutely obsessed. You know, as I said, like, my first impression of flipping through this deck was, okay, I am so drawn in by this, but I am so deeply disturbed. It really does deliver some truthful moments, if you're looking for, you know, kind of hard hitting clarity on certain questions that you're inquiring about. It really is, it's just so captivating and mysterious and very confronting. And just being able to work closely with the guidance from the crow spirit as well, because, well, that's exactly what the crow is. It's a messenger. So as you can see, the artwork is very haunting, dramatic, kind of majestic as well. And even though I've worked with this deck so many times, I'm still taken aback by the images. You know, despite being well acquainted with it by now, I am still obsessed. And I think, you know, I had a struggle starting my shadow journey to begin with. And when I did, I really do believe that I couldn't have done it without this deck. So for me, I've had this privilege to work really closely with this deck, you know, to help me navigate my shadow self. And, you know, naturally I've developed a deep bond. This is like a love affair for me. So this deck was made for shadow work. It can definitely help reawaken some parts of you that have laid dormant for quite some time. So if you do choose to purchase this deck, I would say prepare to go deep within. And I love this Two of Swords image. Oh my god. So that is the Murder of Crows Tarot. I do not think this deck is for the faint-hearted. It's definitely an acquired taste. So I will put that to the side and I will share my number one. And this is literally, how would I describe it? My ride or die deck, basically. And it is the Morgan Greer. Now, this was love at first sight. It really was. And the gas thing is that I had been on the fence about getting this deck for, God, too long. And I remember when I went into my local spiritual shop and bought this, they only had the actual traveling tin size version, which, you know, didn't really bother me because it's not like the cards are really tiny in size. They're actually, they sit in my hands pretty well because I've got pretty small hands. But the tin itself is beautiful. Keeps them safe. It's great for traveling. I tend to take this with me when I am traveling, so yeah, it technically comes with me everywhere. Now, the guidebook is your standard little white guidebook that, you know, usually I would just throw away, but I won't in this case. So as you can see, there isn't really much. It is, of course, in one language, so yeah, that's pretty much all it has to offer in terms of the guidebook. There's just a little kind of breakdown of the suits and the court cards and the major and minor, but that is it. But with saying that, this is my number one go-to when I don't want any bullshit nonsense. and I'm seeking, you know, a tell it how it is kind of message. So there's an instant attraction and deep, powerful bond I had when I first started working with the Morgan Greer. Anyway, I don't want to ramble on too much, but as you can see here with the backing, very simplistic, just beautiful collage of stars. You know, it just kind of reminds me of the 70s. But you know, it also, I'm going on a tangent here, but you know what this reminds me of as well? If anyone is familiar with the Woodstock 99 festival, Netflix released a documentary on it there, I think last year. But this design here is, it is the exact, I'm not joking you, it is the exact design of the main stage backdrop design that they had. These stars and the blue. So yeah, I just realised that. Anyway, enough rambling. So let's get into it. So as you can see, the colours are really quite heavily saturated. And of course, the Morgan Greer Tarot, it does definitely echo the traditional symbolism and imagery of the Rider-Waite, but it brings through its own personality at the same time. And of course, again, I would recommend this deck to beginners. In particular, I just absolutely adore this world card. So it is excellent for getting to the root of things. You will absolutely experience some full exposure with this if that's your intention. And you know, it's just very aesthetically pleasing. Well, to my eye anyway. And I absolutely adore this Nine of Pentacles. Isn't that just beautiful? So yes, this is my #1 deck. It's a deck that I whip out very often, considering I use it so much. It's actually in immaculate condition, I have to say, so well done to me for taking good care of this. But with saying that, it is totally a worthy investment, and I do plan on buying the full version someday. So that's it, guys. They are my top 5 tarot decks. I really hope this was helpful for you, and of course I will leave everything down in the description bar below, and of course I will see you soon on my next video. Bye.